Welcome to week 5, 16th century art in Italy, the High Renaissance. Though there are other things happening during this time, I'm going to focus on some key artworks from the early 16th century. All right, so you should have read chapter 22 in the textbook for this week. And next week will be all about chapter 23. So this week's tasks. So number 1 for the discussion board. Leonardo da Vinci's portrait, the Mona Lisa, is continued to entrance and mystify viewers over the centuries. So explain some of the mystery and enigma behind the portrait, as well as its beauty. Bring in your own experiences, your own opinions, your own thoughts. I really love to read about those. We've all seen this painting. If any of you have seen it in person, that would be a great experience to share. That's actually something that I hope to do one day, like a pilgrimage to the Louvre. And then for your discussion question, or not your discussion, but your journal entry, you will discuss the composition, the symbolism, and possible interpretations of Titan's Venus of Urbino. So that can be found in slide 65 or image 22.28 in the textbook. And the textbook does go more into those interpretations. I've also linked a YouTube video and an article. So the YouTube video goes more about the symbolism and the techniques of Titan and the innovations. And it's a great 3-minute video that packs a lot of information in. And then there's a really easy to read article too. And it also kind of links it into how this artwork has inspired other artworks in the future. So I think it's a really good article, a very easy to read, digestible article. All right, and then also the midterm will be done before spring break, which I believe is coming up in like 3-4 weeks. And so I'll probably start talking about that next week. And you've all been doing a really great job in interpreting art. So describing it, analyzing it, and then interpreting it. So politically, like interpretations, politically, culturally, artistically, or personally, your own personal interpretations. So everyone's been doing a great job. So the slide deck, we can't go through all of it realistically with everything that needs to be covered in the semester. It's 110 slides, but all these slides are available for you because for your midterm, you will be interpreting artworks and you'll be able to look through these slides and pick from them. Okay. Okay, I'm going to skip over a few of these. I won't talk too much about the Mona Lisa, or I'm not going to talk about the Mona Lisa because you'll be discussing it. And this is, really a key, hallmark piece of the Renaissance. When we think of the High Renaissance, this is what we think about, and this is what we know. All right. But we could say during the 16th century, there are 3 distinct modes. So there is the High Renaissance, which occurs between roughly what sources you're looking at, between 1490 to about 1527 specifically. So it's about harmony, balance, and idealism. So key traits would be a pyramid composition, linear perspective, and sfumato, which I'll discuss that technique when we look at the version of the rocks. And the goal was to represent the world as a perfected vision of reality based on mathematical order. And then there's this transition into mannerism, which is more about complexity, artificiality, and anxiety. So it's like aesthetically, the traits are more like elongated limbs, drawing colors, and going back to more illogical spatial depth. And it's like a reaction against the perfection of the previous era. And then there's the counter-Reformation style, which is tied into the religious movements. And it's about clarity, piety, and emotional appeal. Dramatic lighting are key traits, removal of pagan or obscene elements, and a focus on making religious stories easily readable for the masses. And the church used propaganda to win back souls from Protestantism. And this was also laying groundwork for the Baroque period. Okay, so some key things that were happening in the High Renaissance were the Italian Wars. So while Michelangelo was painting, Italy was in a battlefield. So this involved a series of conflicts between France, Spain, and the Holy Roman Empire for control of the peninsula. So the constant threat of invasion explains the underlying tension found in the later 16th century art. So the perfect world of the High Renaissance was literally being pulled apart by foreign powers. So Leonardo's version of the rocks is considered a cornerstone of the High Renaissance because it marks the moment when painting transitioned from the stiff linear style of the 15th century to a more fully realized three-dimensional atmospheric reality. So the work is significant for three primary reasons. So a revolutionary technical execution, its departure from traditional iconography, and the embodiment of Leonardo's scientific approach to nature. So Leonardo, he was not only a painter, but he was also interested in science, secret societies, inventions, and literature, many things. And he brought a lot of this into his artwork, and it's reflected in his artwork. And for this reason, he is also known for not finishing things. So many of his paintings were often left unfinished. Inventions were not always fully realized or not completed. But he left behind he laid a lot of great groundwork, and the things he did do were very revolutionary. So the most immediate significance of this painting, the Virgin of the Rocks, is the sfumato technique, and it literally means smoky. So before Leonardo, Renaissance painters often used very hard outlines to define shapes, but here in the Virgin of the Rocks, he abandons these lines and he allows for colors and tones to meld together, which creates this kind of soft effect, a very soft, smoky rendering of 3D. And he also utilized chiaroscuro, which is a more dramatic contrast between light and dark. So he pulls figures out of this deep, cavernous shadow, and he gives them a more sculptural presence. And this creates a sense of atmospheric perspective. So the humid air of the grotto appears, behind the Virgin Mary, appears to actually exist between the viewer and the subjects. And then these pyramid compositions getting back to my notes. So a pyramid composition, it provides this like geometric stability. And you see this a lot, like Madonna and the Goldfinch creates a very strong composition structurally and also psychologically. So there's this interaction between the figures. You'll notice like a circuit of gestures. So Mary's hand is hovering over Jesus, and the angel points towards John, which is a very traditional icon. The angel pointing towards John, and John kneeling towards Jesus. So this creates like a narrative flow that also keeps the eye moving through the group. So it's also a compositional strategy to help read the narrative. And it emphasizes this intimate human connection between divine figures. And then we're also going to talk about, Leonardo's interest in rendering science. So before there was like this cartoonish stylization of rocks and plants, and Leonardo treated his backgrounds more like a scientific study. And so the grotto, which is like a limestone formation, and damp, misty cave reflects his interest in geology and effects of erosion. And botany, so the flora depicted in the painting, such as the iris, was rendered with accuracy, and it could be identified. And so this also reflects humanism and this kind of meticulous study of the natural world that was very important. And this iconographic ambiguity. So the painting is also famous from its departure from standard religious scripts, where there's no halos, there's no traditional attributes like John's reed cross. So the angel's gaze points a figure towards John the Baptist, which caused confusion and theological concern that a second version was eventually commissioned, which is in the National Gallery in London, to make the religious roles more explicit. So back to the iconography. So the ambiguity in Leonardo's reflects like his preference for psychological complexity over simple religious symbolism. So the simple like religious symbolism was, meant for people to be able to read the painting quite easily. And he went for like this more natural psychological, it's natural, it's complex, it's more psychological complexity of interaction between the figures, and also really bringing the viewer into the paint, to read it psychologically rather than this quick iconography read. Trying to how am I going to phrase that one right? Read of the painting. Okay, so to summarize the significance, we have a transition from early to high Renaissance, naturalism, so moving away from these symbolic representations to more like natural, physical, optical reality, and then complexity. So like this, away from these like simple iconography styles, readings, to more like natural, humanistic representations. Okay, so the Vitruvian Man. So he was the first BCE architect and engineer, and he was an inspiration to Leonardo da Vinci. And Leonardo da Vinci, he was seeking ideal proportions of man, and he determined that the ideal height of man was 8 heads high. And he added his own observations to this well-known diagram of the ideal man figure, the Vitruvian Man. All right, so this is a definitive visual cipher of the high Renaissance humanism. So it articulates the concept of the cosmographic microcosmos. So this symbolizing this mesh, this colliding of the spiritual and mathematical world. So the man is both in the circle, which symbolizes the spiritual and celestial realm, and a square, which represents this terrestrial and material world. So Leonardo mathematically demonstrated that man is a bridge between the two. So beyond its aesthetic harmony, the work is academically significant because it marks a tradition of, or a transition from the medieval symbolic art to a more modern approach. Okay, so it reflects his discipline and his interests in art, geometry, and biology. And so it remains a very iconic representation of the Renaissance. And this like perfectibility of man, if that's like an actual word, like perfecting of man, and this inherent order of the natural world. So positioning the human form in this fundamental scale by which architecture and reality should be measured. Okay, I'm going to go through my notes because I want to kind of go through some more slides with you before I end. But the high Renaissance was brought to a close by the sack of Rome in 1527. So it's an event that signaled a shift towards the more distorted style of mannerism. Yet in those decades, the synthesis of classical learning of the Christian faith produced a standard of excellence that defined Western culture, Western cultural identity for 5 centuries. It remains a testament to what occurs when intellectual inquiry and political resources are aligned towards the pursuit of the ideal. So really, there's still thinking about the merchants and the bankers had so much influence over art during this time. Okay, and I just want to go through some double portraits. So by Raphael. And so, the Pietà. So the subject of the Virgin supporting the mourning dead Jesus, this was very rare in Italian art at the time. So the disparity, the size between the large Virgin and Jesus is kind of forgotten when viewing like how like the smooth modeling of this and the carved forms. So you can see how large he is compared to Jesus. And the statue of David, we'll also do a comparison of the statues of David's made throughout the centuries. And it was commissioned for a buttress of a cathedral in Florence, but it was just like so loved and adored that it was placed in the city square instead. And the concentrated gaze departs from the antique facial expression. So here we have in its glory carved in stone or carved in marble, at 17 feet high without pedestal. And then the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. So if you ever have a chance, you should watch The Agony and the Ecstasy. It's an old dramatic artist movie, but it's, I don't know, almost like a docudrama because there is so much fact intertwined into it with Charlton Heston and Rex Harrison, and it's about the painting of the Sistine Chapel. It's quite a great movie to watch. And there's some more details of it. And there was a lot of drama about the painting of the Sistine Chapel and the incorporation of nude figures and kind of like these cherub-like angels into the creation of it. Okay. Oh, and here's the clip. Charlton Heston. It's for you. All right. I love that clip. Just like the awe of him looking at the chapel. Okay, here's the tomb of Giuliano de' Medici with the allegorical figures of the night and day. Okay, and this is the new sacristy in the Medici Chapel, Church of San Lorenzo, Florence. So San Lorenzo, the concurrence with the tombs was the construction of a new library, the vestibule of which designed by Michelangelo. So columns are recessed into rectangular wall niches in a creative combination of architectural forms. So the forms are more important than function. So a mannerist characteristic. So you do see kind of like this transformation is like a transition, a soft transition to between this importance of the natural world going into more mannerism, these artifice characteristics. Okay, and here's the vestibule of the Laurentinian Library. Okay. And so Pope Julius II enlisted Bramante, Raphael, and Michelangelo to carry out his vision of a revitalized Rome. So Bramante combined principles of Vitruvius and Alberti. Bramante created the Tempietto over the spot where Peter was believed to have been crucified. And here's the Donato Bramante Il Tempietto Church of San Pietro in Montiero in Rome. So, and the dome was restored in the 17th century. And so in northern Italy, architects and painters worked for wealthy patrons, and they created fanciful structures and a colorful, illusionistic painting style. So Giulio Romano was commissioned to build a pleasure palace, and so the design was full of visual jokes and did not include much residential space. And there's the courtyard. And so it had a decoration of two principal rooms. So there's witty designs in the Palazzo del Te, and unifying themes were love and politics. And decoration reflected Federico's DSC alliance with Charles V. And here is Giulio Romano's Fall of the Giants, Sala Giganti in the Palazzo del Te. And also Correggio with his use of dramatic foreshortening. Correggio creates the illusion that the ceiling is opening up with the assumption of the Virgin, and it recalls Montegena's ceiling in the Gonzaga Palace, but utilizes Da Vinci's sfumato and Raphael's idealism. So here's Correggio's assumption of the Virgin. And I'm going to just flip through some more slides so you can see these. To end here in a moment. All right. Oh, yes. I'm trying to get ahead here to this is the artwork that you'll be looking at and talking about. So you'll find it here on the slide deck at about 65. And here is the Venus of Urbino, which is where I'm going to end today. And you can see how it is marking definitely this transition between the high Renaissance style of the early 16th century and a more Mannerist style. So, keeping with my 30 minutes lectures, I'm going to end it here. 'Cause I think this covers really the most important things that you will be discussing in your discussion question, and also your journal entry. And I will post some more materials about the 16th century. But I really encourage you. The book has so much great resources in it and materials to do like a deeper dive into it, and also great resources and great images that you can look at for your midterm. So I will be making like a more optional part 2 for this, but I think this covers most of the important information that you will need to know for quizzes and for your writings and your homework for this week. And again, if you have any questions, reach out to me and I will get back to you ASAP. And I hope you have a great and wonderful week.